Well, I know I've mentioned Art Donovan's legendary performance at the 1994 King of the Ring a few times in the past, although I will say I might have to disagree with the King of the Ring being a great pay-per-view. I don't really feel that year's show was that great. There was a lot of things going on in the WWE at that time, a lot of really, really bad things. Vince McMahon was right in the middle of the steroid trial. As a matter of fact, I think this is one of the only pay-per-views that he didn't even attend. Hulk Hogan literally just like days or weeks before this had signed with WCW, and he was about to go main event Bash at the Beach a month later against Ric Flair in a show that would outdraw the King of the Ring by a lot. And I don't think that this King of the Ring was as good as the year prior. I loved 93. There was so many good matches on that. The whole tournament was just beautifully done. This year it was a little bit different. I really enjoyed the Owen Hart 1-2-3 Kid match. And I also enjoyed the swerve with Jim the Anvil Neidhart when he showed up with Brett by his side, only to turn heel later in the night and join Owen Hart and help him win the King of the Ring. So that I liked. And the Brett Diesel match wasn't horrible. And there was a few things here or there on the show that was very good. Plus we saw the return of Roddy Piper. But overall, I thought the show was very, very weak. And 1994 was a shit time in the WWE. So I might classify the pay-per-view as good, but not necessarily great. And I think part of the reason why we saw Art Donovan on TV was because back then in 1994, wrestling was in a decline. I mean, business was so down for everybody. WCW was about to make some waves by signing Hogan, but really overall, nobody gave a shit about pro wrestling. If you look at what was going on in the WWE at the time, the arenas that they're running, the towns that they're running, just look at the crowd on a 1994 episode of Raw. They are literally inside of a gymnasium with maybe 400 people in there. I mean, there's hardly any crowd at all. These were bad times for live attendance, for television ratings, for pay-per-view buys, for everything. And publicity wasn't that easy to come by for WWE back then unless it was negative. And all the publicity WWE was getting was negative because of Vince McMahon's steroid trial that was happening simultaneously with this year's King of the Ring. So, you know, they were always struggling to find anybody to come in to give the company a boost or give them some publicity or whatever. And King of the Ring was in Baltimore, and Art Donovan is a Baltimore Colts legend, so even though he didn't know shit about wrestling, he was somebody for WWE to bring out there and smear on TV just to give them some sort of an outside rub, and they were hard up for doing that back then. They would make the biggest deal about every little tiny celebrity, even like D-list celebrities. If they had anything to do with WWE, they would talk about it on Raw. They would be so proud of it. They'd print it in the magazines. Now it's like they can't keep the celebrities away. I mean, if you look at the way things are now in 2017, these fuckers are on ESPN. Every time they have a WrestleMania, you've got Shaquille O'Neal, you've got Snoop Dogg, you've got fucking Donald Trump, you have every single celebrity you can possibly think of, all wanting to be a part of the WWE, to where the WWE almost has too much of it. Back in 1994, they had hardly none of it. And that's another reason I think that less than a year later, we saw Lawrence Taylor main event WrestleMania 11, because WWE needed that mainstream publicity, and putting Lawrence Taylor in the ring was going to get a lot of coverage on sports networks and ESPN and shit like that. And, you know, a couple months later, they would go to Chicago and have Walter Payton involved in the Razor Ramon Diesel match at SummerSlam. That was actually very good and very well done. So WWE just seemed like at the time they had a rock hard erection for getting any sort of publicity outside of the wrestling world at all, no matter who they had to put on television. And Art Donovan was one of these situations where they threw him out there with absolutely no preparation at all. First of all, Donovan's an old man. And if you go back and watch, if you've never seen the 1994 King of the Ring, please go check it out and just listen to what Art Donovan says. It's hard to even put this stuff into words. He is just a poor, clueless old man that doesn't know what the fuck's going on, doesn't know a thing about wrestling. He asks literally how much each and every guy weighs. Every time they're coming to the ring, how much does this guy weigh? He's basically like you just taking your grandpa and putting him behind a headset on Monday Night Raw, a guy who's never even watched wrestling before, and say, here you go, here's a headset on live pay-per-view, call this fucking match. You know, what do you think he's gonna say? He's gonna react to what he sees in there like a normal person would. And Art Donovan kept questioning everything. If he saw a strange move, he's like, what did he do that for? A monkey flip or something? Why did he do that? And he just kept asking why people did things. It seemed like somebody would at least take 10 minutes backstage to explain to the guy what professional wrestling is, you know, what it's about, what your job is out there, help get these guys over, just talk a little bit. You don't have to go crazy or anything. You're brand new. You don't know anything about wrestling. So by all means, you know, say what you feel, but just think a little bit before you just say, how much does this guy weigh? How much does this guy weigh? It was one of the worst guest commentary spots ever. I mean, ever. I cannot, off the top of my head, think of anything worse than Art Donovan. I'm sure there's been some, and we've had some shitty guest announcing appearances here or there, but nothing even comes close to poor Art Donovan. So go check out 1994 King of the Ring. You will laugh your ass off. Back then, WWE would put publicity ahead of common sense, and that's one of those things that they should have thought about after they talked to the guy for a few minutes. They should have been like, we can't put this guy out there on commentary. If we want to do something with him, do a segment in the ring, do a backstage interview, parade him out there in front of the crowd to do something, or just to get a little bit of that rub. There was other ways, I think, to do or to utilize Art Donovan at that show other than putting him on fucking commentary. So just poor overall decision making all around by the WWE in that situation. It goes to show how different things were back in 1994. You would not, there's too many people today that would say, we can't do that. And looking back, it just seems so silly. I'm not even mad about this. The King of the Ring, I look back on with like lovable resentment. Yeah, it was a stupid show. Yeah, Art Donovan was out there for no fucking reason whatsoever, but I still smile whenever I go back and watch this pay-per-view because we saw the King of Hearts win the King of the Ring, following in the footsteps of his brother. And it wasn't the worst King of the Ring we ever saw. The next year's would be much worse. 1995 was 10 times worse than 1994, and that's saying something. So Art Donovan, bless his heart, clueless old man that should have never been on commentary to begin with, but it does make for an interesting and entertaining topic years later in podcasts, that's for sure.